Hi everyone, I'm Julia with the Berkeley Judicial Institute, back with another installment of Judges in the Community. Today, we're joined by Justice Colvin to share the inspiring work she has done with the Access to Justice Committee to ensure all litigants, including those who are self-represented, to have access to justice. Uh, Good morning, Justice Colvin. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. I can't wait to dive into your journey and insights, but just to start out, would you mind briefly sharing a little bit more about who you are, where you sit, and your personal judicial history?
Sure. Thank you so much, Julia. My name is Verda Colvin. I am a justice on the Georgia Supreme Court. We reside in Atlanta. That's where our office is. And I am one of 9 justices on that court. I've been on the Supreme Court since 2021. Prior to my service there, I was on our intermediate appellate court, which is the Georgia Court of Appeals. I was there for 15 months. And then prior to that, I served on the trial bench here in the Macon Judicial Circuit for 6 years. And that's our Superior Court is basically our general court of jurisdiction. And so that's my judicial service. I've been serving since 2014 in the judicial capacity, and I've been on the Supreme Court now for about 4 years.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your introduction. It is such an honor to speak with you. Now, diving straight into the core of our conversation today, what project or work are you here to share with us, and where did it all begin?
Well, I am the chair for the Supreme Court of Georgia Access to Justice. And what that is all about is our effort to ensure that everyone can actually access justice within our system of government. As you know, Gideon gives rights to criminal defendants to have counsel, but there is no right to counsel for civil litigants. And so it is said more than 90% of the needs of those who are the working poor go unmet because they don't have access to counsel. And so our effort is to try to make the judicial system more approachable for someone who's proceeding pro se, even on a civil matter. And so in 2016, the Judicial Council of the Court of Georgia started Access to Justice. And it was basically a committee to kind of figure out what can we do to ensure people can better access justice. In that effort, as of now, we meet on a quarterly basis. We have representatives from all levels of court. And we also have people who are within the system, the court system, but not necessarily in the judiciary, who assist us with this. And so there are a variety of things we've done to try to ensure access to justice. Some of those include new forms for landlord-tenant, which is a very huge area where people go unrepresented, and many times they find themselves homeless just because they don't know the procedure, the timeline, and all of that. So we make forms where they're better able to be understood by lay people. We're also in the process of finishing our forms for divorce with children. We've done the forms for divorce without children, which is pretty easy, but we're in the process of finishing those forms with children so that people, even when they have families, can still access the system when they can't afford an attorney. And so those are things we're trying to do with forms to make those more self-explanatory to people so that they can access them. In addition to that, we have self-help centers. We have one that's in Northeast Georgia, which is ran by one of our most wise judges, I will say, Judge Brenda Weaver. And she has basically a court that helps litigants with family law matters. And so she actually has what we call a person who guides them through the process, at least providing the forms without giving legal advice and directing them on procedural elements, like now you have to go to court, get a court date, things like that, to help them navigate the system. We also have a self-help center in Albany, Georgia. And while we don't have a judge who runs that center, we do have an attorney who runs the center, and she has what we call navigators. Navigators are the people who help them go through the process of learning what they need to do to move their case along without giving legal advice. And so both of those have seen an exponential number of people come and seek their service. In fact, Albany, Georgia had people as far as Florida come and as far north as beyond Atlanta to come, because that's a place where they could go to get help for their issues. And so we see that we have a great need here in our state.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm also curious how, your work that, spans this wide variety of things that you had just mentioned. Has there been any roadblocks or inspirations along the way that kind of made this process, manifest into the kinds of services that you have today, and kind of what this committee and the work you do have grown to what it is today?
So there are roadblocks. Well, the biggest roadblock we have, we don't get any government assistance for our program. So everything is kind of cobbled together with local funding, a little bit of funding that comes from our AOC office that kind of helps us with a little bit, but most of it has to be local funding or some funding that's cobbled together, but we don't have any legislative funding. And so that's what we're desperately trying to seek because to be quite honest, that's the only way to make the largest impact. Georgia is 159 counties. Out of 159 counties, 67 counties have 25 or less attorneys. So on top of people not having the financial ability to access an attorney, some counties don't have any attorneys. So unless they have transportation and the financial means to hire an attorney and get to the next county with an attorney, they are at a loss. And so because of that, those of us who are really in the fight for access to justice really feel some passion toward getting our legislators to recognize that we need money to help ensure that all Georgians feel like they have a place and a space in redressing their legal needs. And so that's one of the trying efforts on our part, but we do have some bright spots. We're in the process of trying to implement kiosks in different locations so that we can have a system where even though people might not have a self-help center, not be able to get to an attorney, they can go to a kiosk and they can guide them along to give them the forms that are needed and to kind of tell them the step-by-step directions that are required according to law. So that's a work in progress. Of course, I want that work to be done already, but that's just my passion for ensuring that we do the work that we say we're committed to. And so that's a bright spot. We also have a bright spot in the place where I reside, which is Macon, Middle Georgia. One of our judges here, who was a state court judge, Judge William Adams, affectionately known as Judge Bill Adams, he was so frustrated as he sat on state court to see all the people who would come in his courtroom and have no representation, but have civil needs that needed to be redressed. And of course, in his role as a judge, he couldn't advise, he couldn't give any legal advice. And so he found himself many times having to rule against them for situations that they may have well prevailed in, but they didn't know the process, the procedure, and they had no counsel. So he was so moved by this that when he retired, he was able to start Middle Georgia Justice Center. And so it is a center that works like a self-help center, but he has been amazing in getting funding just from private donations and a little bit of help from maybe some grants, but mostly private donations. And so he has attorneys who actually work on staff so that people can actually have an attorney to help them redress their needs because navigators can only go so far because the way the law is written in Georgia, you can't give legal advice if you're not licensed to practice law. And that's another area we're looking at to try to figure out what ways can we provide more assistance for those who are economically disadvantaged but have civil needs within our system that prevents people from practicing law. So we're looking at a lot of things. We have the Chief Justice, Justice Bogg, has started a regulatory reform committee to look at ways in which we might be able to reform the system that we have to be able to help people navigate the system better. We also, with Access to Justice, have employed the Carl Vinson Institute of the University of Georgia, and they're actually looking at data from both the Northeast Self-Help Center as well as the Albany Self-Help Center to see if we can get the data together to show the legislators that, number one, this is desperately needed, and also that it will help us financially with our court system, because the more people can go through the court system properly, the less times they'll have to appear before a judge, because time is money. And so we're doing all of those things, a combination of everything, to try to find ways to ensure better access to justice.
Yeah, and with those works, and to the extent that you can share, when you reflect on the experience of those who are impacted by these programs and the kiosks and various other ways to kind of lower those barriers when approaching the justice system, are there any stories or moments in particular that stand out to the impact that you've been able to make on your community?
We have many. We have done expungement clinics where people can get their records expunged so that they can go on and get employment. And you'd be amazed at the people that said this one assistance helped them change their lives. And when they change their lives, it changes the lives for their whole family. Their family becomes more economically advantage and they can provide more opportunities for their children. We've had people have their records expunged who say, now I can go into the medical field that I had trained for and was unable to do so. And just seeing someone actually redress their legal needs, that may seem small to those of us who practice law, but for them, it's huge because it's usually a burden they've been carrying for so long, particularly when it comes to consumer debt and those kinds of suit. And to have someone to help them navigate the system so that they can actually have a true day in court, it means everything to them. And that's why I think all of us who work in this arena are very passionate about doing all we can to ensure that they actually have justice.
Yeah, that's amazing. And with these interactions with the community and collaborations, within your committee, I would love to hear a little bit more about the personal impact this has had, and this involvement has had on you, both as a judge and as an individual, because as I've spoken to many judges, many have voiced that, sometimes there's a barrier between being a judge and then
Mhm.
being, a regular civilian. And so I would love to hear kind of this work's impact on that.
Well, I am fortunate in that I've had the experience of every level of judiciary, except for like municipal court, the lower courts. And the one thing I knew I would miss when I became an appellate judge is the interaction with people. I love interacting with people. I am a community worker. I am a true public servant. And so this particular committee gives me the ability to do what I'm passionate about it. And that's helping people navigate the system and inspiring them that, the system can be set up to be designed for you to access the system. And so for me, it's just an outpouring of something that's already in me, that's been a part of who I am, that I miss on some level being an appellate judge because of the restrictions we have and the fact that we don't interface with people on a day-to-day basis. This gives me the ability to make an impact in communities. And to me, that's what being a public servant is all about. It's not really about, it is the position that we have and the work that we do, but it's, I think, making that real impact as a public servant is what you do outside of what you're paid for. And so access to justice is a duty that's not on the normal wheelhouse of what I do as a judge, but it is one of the committees that I chair. And as a result, it gives me that outlet that I need to feel like I'm making a difference in the community and making a difference in people's lives. And so that's why sometimes I'm very passionate. I want things to happen like yesterday, because I know people needed it yesterday.
Yeah, that's amazing. And kind of just like a follow-up, in general, like what does community service mean to you and how do you think this impacts the community in the way that you value it and how it can influence others to take part in it?
Community service is everything to me. I went to law school just because I wanted to serve. That was the only reason why I went. I never thought I would maybe have a position where anybody would know me or make tons of money. I just wanted to do my part to make the world better, to make my community better. And so for me, public service is the whole reason why I do what I do. The work part of it is a part of being a lawyer, but the part that really touches my heart and motivates me is the service that it allows me to give to others. I think it's everything. I think when you get in these positions as judges, you're leaders. And as leaders, leaders serve. And one of the quotes that I use often that is the mantra for my life is if service is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. And to me, to be a leader means that you have to be committed to service. And so for me, it's everything. It's what makes me get up in the morning. It's what makes me say yes to you. I tell people all the time, I am what is the word that I use? I am entrenched and drenched in the word yes. If someone asks me to do something that's related to service, my answer is yes. And the only way I say no is if I have something else on my calendar, because I feel like that's what servants do. Servants make themselves available to serve. And so for me, community service is everything.
Yeah, and then kind of straying away from community service for a little bit, I just had a question of like, what do you think makes the barriers of people, the layperson to access the justice system and understand it? What do you define or would you say is the biggest barrier that's creating this, and maybe how those in the judiciary can work towards lowering those barriers together? Like, did you have any insight on that?
I think what makes it hard for lay people is it's this own little world. The legal world is like its own little world, separate apart from anything that's on the day-to-day minds of lay people. And so it's like they can't even envision how you enter this world to redress a legal need without an attorney, because to them it's like a foreign language. They don't know the language, and so they can't participate. And so I think the way we help with that as judges is we make the atmosphere and the language something that everybody can understand. The atmosphere can be inviting and make it receptive to having people come in, even without an attorney. But the only way I think it will be receptive to judges is if we make the system such that they come in with at least the minimum amount of knowledge to know how to navigate the system. Because judges have so much on their plate that when people come in and it's still a foreign language to them, it takes up time, resetting of cases, because they don't even know the procedure that they are duty bound to follow in order to redress their legal needs. So I think that's how we help make it better for the system and for lay people in general, to make it less shrouded in mystery, to make it easily accessible. And that ensures access to justice, because access means more than just being able to walk into a courthouse or a courtroom. It means having the tools necessary to be able to walk in and at least navigate with some minimum level of sufficiency to get through the process to redress your needs.
Yeah, that's a great segue into my last question for you, which
Okay.
is for those who are interested in doing and starting the kind of work that you do. I would love to know what it takes for you to prepare, the things necessary in your Access to Justice program, and any expert tricks for those who are, aspired to get involved in such work.
What I will say to you first and foremost, get buy-in. Make sure you have people who are helping you, who feel like you feel about access to justice, who really are committed to doing the work. Get some of them on your committee. Also, you want to get some political leaders on your committee, because let's be honest, you'll need money, you'll need political clout, and at some point that will help you gain the things you need to truly provide access to justice. That's something we've talked about on our committee, getting someone, maybe a representative or a senator, to be a part of our committee so they too can understand the importance of this work. And that's something that hasn't happened. And now that I'm talking to you, I'm going to remember to put that on our agenda about reaching out to see if that's something we can do. But the bottom line is you want to get buy-in from a lot of different people within your community to help toward the work. And then start simple. Because if this work is not already being done in your community, you've got to get people on board. And so the way you start simple is by going through some of the administrative hoops that people have to go through, and find ways to make that easier, like having papers that are out in the clerk's office on the desk so that people can know this is how you access something that you may need from the clerk of court. So you start small with big dreams and work toward those big dreams. And that's the same thing we're doing here in Georgia.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and experiences. I'm sure many of those tuning in on this interview are as inspired as I am. And with that, as a member of the Berkeley Judicial Institute, I want to thank you, Justice Colvin, again so much for the amazing insights on your involvement, with the community and with this access to justice program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.